And welcome back to another episode of Five Questions with the Paulist Fathers. And today, from the wonderful land of Knoxville, Tennessee, at John the 23rd University Parish, is Father Don Andrie. Father Don, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.
So let's get right into it. So question one. You always talk about making people feel welcome as a primary means of ministry. How has that had to change since you can't even really welcome people into Mass anymore, during this pandemic?
Well, and it is tough. We've been trying to outreach, especially we upgraded and do a lot more emails than we did because that was always our main connection to students and especially to parishioners, just to try to keep them, students also with GroupMe, but that's, the in-group more or less. And but we try to put inspirational things up. We've doing usually 2 to 3 emails a week rather than often it was just one, and trying to keep connection, especially encouraging those who are having difficulties and that kind of thing as much as we can. But it's it's scary, and especially looking toward how do we connect to this new students that might be coming next fall. And all the planning that we normally would do in late spring with all the student leaders. We have managed to work with the student leaders, had a couple of extra things with them and connections. And so elections happened and things like that. So we know who the new leaders for next year will be, but we have no idea what it's going to be like.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I know that I've been to Knoxville to your place, and you had a lot of spaces there for students all the time too. So that had to change too, huh?
Yep, and pretty much totally empty, which is, it's like, boy, that's sort of difficult. It's too quiet around here.
Yeah, right.
And so we're just still trying to connect to make sure that they know we're here. And actually, we did. Partly it was all the regular scheduled kind of evenings. They could do it through the university, so they did set up Zoom just for the students to get together and talk.
Right.
And so they had to connect, and people were connecting back and forth, and so seeing their friends and such that many, since they live in different parts of the state, haven't been able to see. So again, those kinds of things to again facilitate the connections that already were there. For parishioners, the non-students, which is about half of our constituency, we've been maintaining regular email contact and Zoom meetings for certain things. We've had several, besides finance parish council, things like we've had a couple, several of sort of, what would you call them? I guess, webinars, I guess whatever called, but gatherings of parishioners and talking about different topics. Like the first one was, how do you find God in the middle of a pandemic? And made perfect sense. And essentially going back to, that core question, why do bad things happen to good people?
Yeah, right.
And which was really interesting and a lot of fun. And then we recorded that so people could watch it if they weren't able to get there at that time. But, just trying to, again, maintain all of those questions as much as we can.
Right. And you're open, right? Like just for prayer though, right?
We're open for people to come in for prayer. They're supposed to keep social distancing, but considering the number that have been coming in, that hasn't been a problem.
Right. Okay, so question 2. You are the gift of good timing, I think. You just got back from the Holy Land not that long ago, right? Tell me about that.
Right. I was there from like the 10th through 20th or so of February, and just getting back, and they were talking about it spreading. And, within a few weeks, everything was closed. So that was, but it was spectacular and such fun, especially as we're getting near Lent and Easter and seeing a lot of the places and the topography of the land and all of that. When you look at all of what happened and when, and some extra information and what we know and what's conjecture and what's tradition and all those things. But it was a blast. And so essentially my plan was to go through something like 15 or 1800 pictures that I'd taken, my sister had taken, my brother-in-law had taken, my younger sister, and then stuff that some other parishioners had taken, because they took pictures like during mass, and I couldn't do that. Well, it would look bad if I did, because Father Rich and he was leading it, and I was there too, and we took turns with masses and preaching and things like that. But we're always celebrating. So, but it was fun, and this actually did one of my, still being open at least for prayer, even though not a lot of people were still here, and administration's going on, and employees, and all of that, and so I've been somewhat busy, but I did have more time, so I was able to sort through all those pictures, add captions, all those things, get it up on a website for family and friends and the people that were on it, and just actually got done yesterday on that, adding captions and everything else to the photo gallery. But boy, it was fun reliving that.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah, I think, and especially in the middle of this, seeing, Good Friday does go to Easter in God. It doesn't always fix everything in our world, but that hope in the resurrection, that belief in a God of life and love and compassion and mercy, I think really helps in the middle of all of this. And it was fun to see all those places and feel all that in a sense again, as we're, sort of lonely, I guess, at points, with no one hardly around.
Yeah. And so question 3 relates to preaching. In your own preaching, do you mention the pandemic every single time, or do the scriptures take your preaching elsewhere?
I think I'd have to say probably not every other time. I'm only so at getting current events into homilies. Usually it certainly would relate to what people are experiencing, so it would fit somehow. You aren't going to have a totally cheerful gospel, other than in the sense of the cheerful homily, because it's going to say, well, we're going to live in hope of that cheerfulness back, or something like that. But yeah, it's you want to at least refer to where people are. It's got to relate to where they are. So sometimes I would guess it's implied, but not necessarily explicit. But it's always going to be, related to where people are now. So it's going to be in the background no matter what.
Sure. And so question 4, besides preaching being a comfort, what are some of your other comforts? What's your isolation comfort food, and what's on your isolation playlist?
My isolation comfort food is Kung Pao chicken from Wok Chow.
Wow.
They have takeout, so you can get it real easy, and it is incredibly good. We've had a seminarian here for most of the year. He went back this week, but he also liked Kung Pao, so we got there at least a couple times a week, I think. And that does just brightens one's day. I'm sorry, it does.
Spicy, yes, or
medium spicy.
Medium spicy. Okay. And your playlist?
Well, weirdly enough, I'm into the melancholy kind of stuff, and I like a variety. Well, my favorites tend to be the folk songs, but like Home, by is it Sheldon? I'm bad at authors and all that kind of stuff, and a lot of Peter,
Phillips,
Paul, and Mary, and things like that, and yeah.
Cool. And so finally, question 5, and the last one for today. What do you think the church is going to be like on the other side of this pandemic?
Well, near term and far term. Near term, we're talking about reopening by the end of the month with physical distancing. I don't like social distancing because you're not supposed to be socially distant, but physical distancing, and people coming in careful to try to prevent spread of the disease in the place, which you really want to try to do. That is going to be people spread out. We have a large multi-purpose space, so we can set up chairs in various areas and keep people fairly separate. But it's going to be a lot smaller numbers, so we'll see how that goes and how to do that well. Long term, I think that some of the less physical connection kind of thing is going to be probably a norm as we go forward in people's lives. Less hugs and handshakes, more maybe, the whole the sort of Asian, bow kind of thing, to people, and which is respectful and wonderful too. But we'll see if that takes off. I think that it's just some level of a little bit more care as far as spread of disease is just going to be in people's minds so much more going forward, even when we're past this whole mess.
Right. Yeah. And as we've been saying throughout this series, who knows is always the answer to that question.
No kidding. Yeah.
It's just we're just gonna have to wait and see. It could be, I always say, are people going to adopt a faith or adapt a faith? Or, I forget who said this. Somebody said, I wonder if people will even come back. Like if they're sitting around watching stuff on Zoom, they're like, well, I just do this at home,
Yeah. I'm hoping if they have medical issues, maybe not, or if they're sick, maybe not. But I think there's two things. One, there is nothing like the real experience.
Absolutely.
In anything. You can watch a lot on TVs, but people still go to concerts. The other is you can watch people receive the Eucharist, but it is not like receiving the Eucharist. So, we're trying to be careful how we do that, but wanting to bring that back because, that desperate hunger that we can have for Christ being in our lives in such an easy to see way, I think is still going to draw people.
Indeed, that's the way I feel too. And so this has been 5 questions with the Paulist Fathers with Father Don Andrie. Hey, say hi to everybody out there in Tennessee.
Well, I'll do that, and hi to everyone else who sees this throughout, hopefully, the nation and maybe even a little of the world. You never know.
Indeed. So as we go around the world, we'll talk to you another time. Take care, everybody.
God bless.